Good evening. Good evening, and apologies for that very short delay. A very warm welcome on behalf of Milim to this evening's presentation. This will be our last presentation of 2024, and we have a real treat for you this evening. Welcome wherever you are in the UK and indeed wherever you are in the world. And once again, I'm delighted to welcome our viewers from around the globe. Now, our series of online talks and conversations continues with our guest, Jonathan Gabay, and I'll introduce Jonathan to you in just a moment. A little bit of housekeeping first. Please do ask questions. You can do this by typing whatever you'd like to ask into the Q&A facility on your screen. And as ever, we'll do our best to get through as many of your questions as we can. Can I also draw your attention to the chat facility? This can be used to send a message or comment to all the other participants on this webinar, should you wish to do so. Finally, we are recording this event and it'll appear on the Milim website at milim.org.uk in the next few days. There you can find recordings of other past events, as well as details of our future programme for which you can book tickets. Now, to our guest this evening. Jonathan Gabay is an award-winning copywriter, an international podcaster, keynote speaker, university lecturer, and the author of 15 books. He regularly appears on TV news channels, including BBC, Sky News, and Al Jazeera. His digital psychology courses are delivered at major universities and for organizations such as the Chartered Institute of Marketing. He has also devised and delivered successful graduate level programs for universities throughout Europe and advises major educational institutions on the use of AI. Jonathan is the author of this book, the recently published Practical Digital Marketing and AI Psychology. This evening, he's going to be speaking to us about bringing Jewish ethics to artificial intelligence. Jonathan, we're all very excited to hear what you've got to say. So without further delay, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, and hello and good evening, everyone. So, as Jonathan said, what are we going to be talking about today or this evening? We're going to be talking about the Kosher Code, which is bringing Jewish ethics to artificial intelligence. And I've been working now with AI, well, for quite a long time, before ChatGPT and all that sort of stuff. And as Jonathan said, I teach it. I help organizations get more out of it. And this evening, with Hanukkah coming up, I thought, because you guys asked me to speak to you, I thought it would be quite a different way of looking at it, from the point of view of looking at things from the point of view of Jewish ethics. Now, when I say Jewish ethics, we will get to the Jewish ethics, which will be the majority of what I'm going to talk to you about this evening. But before then, I'm going to talk about where we are now, considerations that people, cross people's minds when it comes to ethics and AI. Then, just before I get into the Judaic side of things, I'm going to talk about classical ethics, such as Aristotle and Plato. And the reason I do that is because it's interesting to look at the two views, from the classical point of view and then over to the Jewish view. Then I'm going to talk about Emet. I'll explain it all as we go along. And then I'm going to show why everything connects in ways that you may not have thought of. So I really do hope that you enjoy this evening. And so let's do it. So where are we now? When it comes to AI, the number one question that I am ever asked on AI, if you write it down there for yourself, what do you think Jonathan's number one question is going to be? I'm going to give you the answer right now. The number one question that I am asked is it going to take my job? That's the number one question that I am ever asked on AI. And then, of course, it goes into the more technical stuff. Well, I think this thing about taking jobs from a psychological point of view, as Jonathan Straight said, my latest book is about psychology of all of this stuff. I think it has to do with this next thing, which is authenticity. People are worried. People are scared. They've always been scared of new technology. It's not new. They were scared of the printing press. They were scared of cars, you name it. They've been scared of it because they think it will take jobs. And I suppose they're right. All of those things took jobs, but as we also know, looking in hindsight, they also gave a lot of jobs. They also created, if you wish, a lot of jobs. But the thing that is different from in terms of now and then is authenticity. We're living in a world where when Trump first came into power, he of course ran on the ticket of inauthenticity, in other words, fake news. And we now live in a world where we are told, oh no, we are openly told, absolutely, this thing is, guess what? It's artificial. Um, and that it will also save time, save pressure doing repetitive tasks and things like that. The problem with this idea of doing repetitive tasks and that sort of issue is that one of the things that I get worried from an ethical point of view when it comes to AI is the idea that it's going to make us more stupid. And I'll tell you why. Because if we are going to say that we're just going to get well, yeah, we're going to write an advert or whatever it might be, and we're going to get AI to do it, and we just press buttons, then it just makes us, we just, in fact, it infantilizes us. But when it comes to this sort of issue, my view that I talk to brands about around the world is this is that if you just press a button and say to the model, whether it's going to be Chat GPT or Gemini or whatever it might be, you do all the work and that's it. And then, yes, of course, it's going to take away jobs and people are just, well, it's a disaster area. But I teach the way that I look at AI is I actually teach that it's actually, if you use it in the right way, in an ethical way, in a creative way, I think not only is it going to save your job, I think it's going to create a much more interesting job. We are living in a world where news and AI has changed so many things. This uh, this photograph was taken in Mer Sharim, and in Mer Sharim they have these posters, which are basically the news of the week. Actually, sometimes they get really up to date and say the news of yesterday and stuff like that. Of course, news today and with technology is 24/7, and news itself and the way that we receive news to do with processing information in a very, very fast way. It's gone from sensationalism when I used to work in Fleet Street to selling angst and cynicism. Um, and this idea of being cynical and skeptical about AI has led to quotes such as these ones here. This is from March of this year. And Elon said, "We are seeing a 10 times growth in AI power every 10 months. AI will likely be more intelligent," he says, "than all humans combined, blimey, by 2029. Ray Kurzweil, the futurist, the eminent futurist, says by 2029, AI will match any person I'm considered conservative. People think that will happen next year or the year after. My view is no. It's it's brilliant, and as I say, I teach this to organizations on how to use it. But my experience is we will get there, but not quite yet. Synthetic data. The other issue that's happening, according to many reports, and I just put some sources up there, is, and this is really interesting, is that studies suggest that AI could run out of high quality natural data sources as early as 2026, with low quality data potentially depleting between 30 and 60. The index web, which contains approximately 500 trillion unique tokens, a token I want you to think of it like the letters, the individual letters, the words, and so on and so forth of a sentence, of a paragraph, is expected to grow by only 50% by 2030, which may not be sufficient to support the evolving needs of AI models. So, from from a synthetic point of view, and we're getting into the ethics stuff, this is an issue because if AI doesn't have the data, then it will make up the data in order to test things, to test theories, and all the rest of it. So this brings me to a consideration of truth, of what are we having a look at what we're seeing? Is it the actual truth? Eliezer Yudkowsky, an AI researcher, I believe from Israel, said by far the greatest danger of artificial intelligence is that people conclude too early that they understand it. That's another thing. It isn't exactly what you may think it is because a lot of it is black boxed. Yuval Harari, the again an eminent author, as you know, he said the danger of artificial intelligence stems from its capabilities, not our intentions. As we outsource more and more decisions to AI, we must ensure that such these systems serve our, in other words, humanity's interests. So, what kind of things are we looking at from considerations of ethics? Well, bias and fairness. AI systems can perpetuate and amplify biases in training data. For example, facial recognition systems with a higher error rates for women and people with darker skin tones, and that was from research in 2024. And the reason for this is the way that AI works. And I'm not going to go into the depth today of how AI works, but I will just say a lot of it has got to do with patterns and coming up with common denominators in terms of finding patterns that fit. And it's for that reason that you get these biases. Privacy and data protection. AI data raises concerns about privacy and data protection. Of course, the very famous one before AI was really, really kicking off, but now it's even more so potentially, was of course, and I mentioned Trump before, was of course the Cambridge Analytica scandal back in 2019. Next one is transparency. Many AI systems, as I said, work in these black boxes. They call them black boxes. So it's difficult to understand, to fully understand their decision-making process. Although, as I said, I try to teach people as best as I can how it actually works. We have the EU GDPR, which forces organizations to become more accountable and therefore more responsible. And talking about accountability and responsibility, here's another ethical issue. Who is responsible if it goes wrong, if it does harm? For example, back again in 2018, a self-driving Uber vehicle struck and killed a pedestrian, and it was all controlled by AI. Or another example, Compass, which is correctional offender management profiling for alternative sanctions, great name that, algorithm used in US courts to predict criminals who reoffend, demonstrated significant racial bias. The AI predicted twice as many false positives for repeat criminal behavior for black offenders compared to white offenders. Now, of course, it has, and it's learning all the time from its mistakes, but the mistakes can happen. So those are kind of that touches on these kind of considerations that you and I can kick off with when it comes to thinking about ethics and AI. So let's now go back in time and let's go back to classical ethics and AI, which will be a good intro into the Judaic stuff, which we will talk about after this. So I want to talk about Kant, Bentham Mill, Aristotle, Plato, and the Golden Rule. So Kant had something called the categorical imperative. I mean, I don't. I bet Kant would never have believed that we were going to be using him to discuss artificial intelligence. But there you have it, signs of the time. He was introduced in something that he called the groundwork for metaphysics of morals, in which he said that we need to treat humanity as an end in itself, never merely as a means. And so he was talking about the inherent dignity and autonomy of people, as individuals. And any system, of course, he didn't know of AI, but any system, any law, any structure, information, political system, yeah, must keep that in mind. These two, Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, spoke about something called beneficence, which is focusing on AI for the common good. They said that it's all about doing something good. And what is good? Well, good is about the moral worth of what you do based on how happy it makes you and the people around you. And I thought that's quite an interesting thing in terms of AI, because, what can it do? Healthcare, prioritize patient well-being and improved health outcomes. It can do that. It can spot diseases, ensures AI complements rather than replaces human care. That's important as well. Well, it's important in all aspects, not just in healthcare. Societal benefits encourages AI solutions that reduce inequalities, and we spoke about that, and about the idea that it can enhance. Well, it should be created to enhance the quality of our lives. The human enhancement, which is focusing on augmenting human capabilities, supporting the development of assistive technologies, fantastic for that. Trust building promotes responsible AI development. That when those people who are coding, that we get this idea of trust for the good, from the moral, for the ethical good within the way that they code. Although, as I'm going to show you a little bit later, so bear with me on this idea of trust building by using something called responsible AI development can, if not used carefully, well, it can hit us back in the face, but I'll come back to that. Aristotle, he spoke about many things, and I just chose a few here. One of them was virtue ethics. And within that, that would be AI that embodies moral character like fairness, transparency, and benevolence. He also spoke about the golden mean, which is balancing ethical trade-offs in AI by finding an optimal balance between competing ethical considerations, such as our privacy, versus how useful it is for us. Very important. Eudaimonia, which is enhancing human flourishing. He spoke about that, improving the overall human well-being and fulfillment rather than just solving specific tasks. And that goes back to the slide when I spoke about people being infantilized, where that you're just, oh, well, it makes my life easy because all I have to do is press a button. But the trouble with just solving specific tasks, like I press a button and it does it for me, yeah, is that improving overall human well-being? It's a question that we need to consider. Plato. Plato, two from Plato, again, could have got many more from him than these two, but ideal forms is one of the things he spoke about, which is and I use that to talk about encouraging developers to aim for the highest ethical ideals, and we spoke about that with one of the other philosophers before. Another of his tenets is the philosopher king. And that can be applied in this way, that those guiding AI developments should possess both the technical knowledge as well as the strong ethical foundations. So, again, it's going back to not just putting in stuff from the point of view of it's a great utility, but actually what are the ethics behind that utility. But once again, putting those in with the other ones, parceling them together. I will come back to the slap in the face a little later. Now, before we get into the Jewish side of it, I wanted to talk about the Golden Rule. And the Golden Rule, I'll go from Hinduism. One should never do that to another which one regards as injurious to one's own self. Baha'i, lay not any soul of a load which you would not wish to be laid upon you. Islam, none of you truly believes until he loves his brother for what he loves for himself. Christianity, in everything do to others as you would have them done to you. And from a Jewish point of view, Talmud Shabbat, I think it's 31a. That which is hateful to you, do not do to another. That alone is the entire Torah, and the rest is just interpretation. Now go out there and study. So, and of course, there's Buddhism, Jainism, Taoism, and so on and so forth, and they are all very, very, very similar in terms of don't do to others what you wouldn't do to yourself. And I think that is a very good, taking that as well as the other things that I gave you a little bit of an intro to, is a very good foundation, if you wish, to talking about AI, as the talk says, the Kosher Code, talking about it from a Jewish perspective. So let's start, bearing in mind what I just spoke about before, and let's get into this. Derech Eretz Kadma LeTorah, which means in English, it's from Vayikra Rabbah 9:3. Proper ethical conduct precedes the Torah. So the first thing is going back to this idea that whatever it is that you're doing, whatever technology you're working with, you know, putting the morals, the ethics of it comes before absolutely everything else. Responsibility and accountability. Achriyot. Individuals are accountable for their actions, which extends to their creations. Now, I think that this can be applied to AI to ensure that the developers are responsible for what the outcomes are. In fact, the Talmud discusses indirect damage, gerama, and its obligations and responsibilities. So, looking at that section, applying this, it's about thinking about what are AI's potential indirect consequences and work proactively to mitigate against the ones which are wrong. Next, we can look at concepts such as tzedek, which is justice or fairness, and it encompasses ethical behaviors and moral uprightness. Treat people, as equals. It is the pursuit of social justice and human dignity. So the Torah emphasizes tzedek repeatedly, as in the verse, tzedek, tzedek, tzedek. In other words, justice, justice, you shall pursue. So put justice first. Next comes mishpat, which relates to judgmental law and legal processes. This is involving fair application of our regulations in terms of AI and impartial judicial proceedings, proper governance. Governance is absolutely key, and getting that right in terms of the different countries around the world with the influences from different brands such as OpenAI and so on and so forth, making sure that we're all singing off the same hymn sheet is a issue. And it's something that, I know that politicians are looking at the moment as we go into 2025. Anyway, the Torah commands appointing judges who would judge people with a righteous judgment, mishpat tzedek. Next one is, again, continuing with the idea of justice and compassion, tzedek mishpat. Biased AI systems lead to unfair treatment based on factors like race or gender. And the reason that it does that sort of idea is, again, goes towards how AI actually thinks, which is about making patterns and looking for common denominators and stuff like that. So Jewish ethics prioritizes AI technologies to promote equitable treatment. Tzedek provides the moral foundation for mishpat, and mishpat is the practical application of the tzedek. All right, what about another one? Let's look at, we were talking about fake, about using, well, of course, there's amazing stuff that I teach. I teach people how to use AI, like filmmakers in America. I teach them about using it like a Sora and other ones that are out there. Pika is another one. There's a new one that's just come out, well, just been announced anyway, by Gemini, and there'll be many more coming our way. And these pieces of technology, they are amazing, because You don't have to be a filmmaker anymore. You can type in what you want, describe it, and it will come up with the picture, or well, the picture in this case, or the movie. And that picture of Donald and Camilla, that is, I think this fake was about, I don't know, whatever, 4 or 5 months ago. Today, if you were to ask the model to produce a similar fake, it would be so accurate. It would be very, very. I mean, I can see that one's quite easy to spot, but it would be very difficult in terms of saying whether is this a fake or not. So this brings us to Givat Da'at. The Talmud in Chulin 94 discusses deceiving someone in a way that causes distress. So transparency, as I said, is absolutely crucial. Another issue is using AI for facial technology, facial recognition technology. And that can be for obviously for security purposes, of course, with the absolute tragic, beyond tragic, actually, stuff that has happened only a few days ago in Germany. Maybe that would have been a good use of AI in terms of facial recognition. But on the other hand, does it compromise individual privacy? So that is a complicated one. And again, in the Talmud, it talks about this. Talmud in Berchot 19b emphasizes the value of human dignity over. Now, when it says rabbinic prohibitions, we can think about that, or I'd like you to think about that from the point of view of law. So putting human dignity before, not, well, not law, maybe better than law, the regulations. That's the word I'm looking for, the regulations. So technologies compromising human dignity and violating privacy and autonomy may again need some redesign. Achrayut. Achrayut is about responsibility and accountability. So in the case of a accident in a AI-driven car, who would be responsible? Would it be the manufacturer? Would it be the software developer? Would it be the driver, the car owner, and so on and so forth? Mishnah in Bava Kama discusses something called Adam Muad Leolam, meaning one is always liable for one's own actions. Interesting how that applies in terms of autonomous driving, for example. So if there was a, how can I put it? If there was some sort of a formula. I think it's about technical expertise and deep ethical reasoning, really understanding the ethics behind stuff. I think that is going to hopefully give you it will add up to the preservation of human dignity. Which brings us, when it comes to dignity, it was Rambam, I believe, who was talking about the idea of if a person has a job and then they lose the job, it's about giving them back their self-esteem, their self-respect, and stuff like that the job gave them. So Avodah, AI-driven robots could replace workers. Pirkei Avot 2.2. It's not upon you to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist from it. So while AI can help us achieve more, I think from a Jewish point of view, it shouldn't replace the fundamental need to work. And the most important word here is purpose, to find purpose in what we do. Because again, I very, very much worry. I really, really do worry for the next generation about the idea of just pushing buttons. My industry, marketing, CIM earlier this year, they were talking about it's almost 50% of people said that marketing will now change completely. And I worry about that. And that's why I spend so much time with CIM and others talking about how we can use AI not to replace, but to support. And as I said, every time I teach it, people come back and say, this isn't so bad. In fact, it actually could be quite good. And that's what I want to hear. Talmud Torah. Now, of course, from a Jewish point of view, education is a religious obligation. AI can provide personalized learning paths based on strengths and weaknesses, like any teacher. Yeah, looking at the kids' weaknesses, strengths, and adapting to each of the learning styles. And again, this is one of the great things that you can do with AI. One of the things I do with AI when I'm advising educational institutions is a lot of them, they say to me, "Oh, Jonathan, they're going to be using whatever ChatGPT, Claude, or whatever it might be, Anthropic. They're going to be using it to actually produce the essays and all that stuff." My view is we start off by getting AI to do the essay, and then we turn to Bina, which is critical thinking. Critical thinking, where we as humans or as students, in the case of an educational authority, we can look at what AI has come up with, and then we can critique it rather than it critique us. And then we get to a point where the final output, or whatever the essay may be, is going to be much more interesting because we are leading the way rather than it is leading the way. Which brings me to the word emet. Now, as you know, well, it's just in front of you, it says it's composed of 3 letters. And so Aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Mem, the middle, and Tav, the last. Truth, Emet, spans the entirety of existence from the beginning, Aleph, to the end, Met, end, Met. We eventually become Met. And I think that is a big, big core to looking at AI from an ethical point of view. From the beginning to the end, are we speaking the truth? The truth in terms of transparency, in terms of checking the facts, in terms of veracity, and so on and so forth. Does truth, like I'm speaking to you from the UK, and in the UK we have we got these seaside towns where we have these rocks of candy, and in the middle of the rock it would say the name of the town, like Brighton or Margate or wherever it might be. And I think that the middle of the rock, the middle of the candy, it should be Emet that goes all the way through. And I suppose if you wanted to put a additional layer of candy, and then I would say it would be Hesed. So Emet is truth, and Hesed is, oh, sorry about this, but Hesed is kindness. So remaining truthful while maintaining humanity and compassion in whatever we do. So Hesed, from an AI point of view, is prioritizing fairness, justice, and societal well-being. And that is giving both sides of the story. Otherwise, we go back to, I think, the third slide that I gave you today, which was about cynicism. Yeah, and about news being about selling angst and anguish. That's not societal well-being. Compassionate AI, design AI systems to interact with empathy, especially in sensitive areas. Responsible, looking at dignity, the social good, uh, and human-centric AI, ensuring that AI augments our values rather than overtakes the values, if you wish. Tikkun Olam is another tenet of Judaism, and it means repairing the world. The responsibility to improve and perfect the world through ethical behavior and social justice. So, for example, machine learning developed by AstraZeneca and trained on UK Biobank health record data, they say, could predict over 1,000 diseases before they're even diagnosed. I would say that is definitely Tikkun Olam. Fantastic stuff. Now, the first time I ever was asked to talk about AI from a Jewish point of view, remember, I'm not a rabbi. I'm a teacher. I'm an academic. But when I was first asked to do it, one of the things that was very interesting, I was speaking to a rabbi, and we're talking about, uh, is this going to mean that people won't go to yeshivot or even schools or whatever it might be? And it's interesting, as you know, as you know, uh, Jews believe that when you are born, before you're born rather, um, the it's an interesting. I mean, yeah, you could take this with a pinch of salt if you wish. It's up to you. But what we believe is that this bit here, yeah, is where an angel touched us, because um, before we're born, we actually know absolutely everything. And I mean everything. And our job, one of our jobs, not the main purpose, but one of the jobs that we have is to go and relearn what we forgot. Now, that made me think, because if people are going to go to yeshiva to learn, let's say they're going to do this. Let's just put this up here so that we can get this up here. The Babylonian Talmud, also known as the Shas, okay? Now, the Shas, the Mishnah and the Gemara, has approximately 2.5 million words in it. Okay, so this is stuff we're supposed to learn. That's over 2,711 pages. Each page is basically, give or take, a lesson. Okay, now completing the entire thing would typically take about approximately, 7 years and 5 months, assuming one lesson a day. If you studied the Shas daily from birth until you died, assuming that you lived, I'm going to give you a 79-year span. Sorry about that. But I'm going to give you a lifespan of 79 years. You will complete the whole thing just under, well, you do just about 12 full interpretations in your lifetime of the Shas. Okay, now, if we do a little bit of calculation in this, excluding high holy days, Yom Kippur and so on and so forth, and Shabbat, that gives you about 300 working days a year. So starting at Bar Mitzvah and studying daily until we were 79, you would complete, because I'm going to say that you're going to start reading it at Bar Mitzvah. I mean, I'm sure people will start reading it way before that, but at Bar Mitzvah, you would complete approximately 7 cycles of the Shas. So what if you have if you had the ability, which we do with AI, that you don't have to learn the whole of the Shas. In fact, we start off by having the knowledge in front of us and then questioning, well, questioning the knowledge in terms of going up a level. Wouldn't that, wow, in terms of one of our purposes, wouldn't that be an amazing point to start from? Well, with AI, it is literally something that you can start from. Obviously, you would have rudimentary stuff that you still have to learn, but it really changes the game. Which brings me to the slap in the face. I told you, I'm sorry, but I told you we'd get to it, the slap in the face. So one of the other things we'd be talking about, I mean, all these people, Plato, Kant, various rabbis and all the rest of it, keep on talking. They keep going on about, if you're going to be coding, well, they just say it's literally about coding, but if you're going to be doing this stuff, do it ethically and all that. And he said it time and time again, don't do to others what you wouldn't done to yourself, and so on and so forth. The problem with that is that you can get to a very difficult place, which also really worries me, because you start censoring AI. Because there are questions that you can ask AI, or prompts that you can put into AI. For example, if you want to put a prompt of Donald Trump in the nude, there you go. Donald Trump in the nude kissing a strawberry or whatever. It won't allow you. There are ways to do it, but most of the time it will not allow you to do it. Or you want to know how to make a bomb. Maybe you're teaching about explosives. It won't tell you how to do it. You want to know what is the most effective way to kill yourself. It will not tell you how to do it because it has self-censorship built into the whole thing. Now, of course, there are great reasons why we don't want that stuff out there. But from a creative point of view, I think this is limiting usefulness. It's stifling creativity. It's definitely reinforcing bias because you, AI, are telling me what I can learn and what I can't learn. There's even, an element of thought control. You're even telling me what I can think. In fact, what was it? I think about 10 days ago, another thing related to this was OpenAI gave us lots of great gifts for Christmas, including for $200 a month, you can have the tier of information. Well, that's if you can afford $200 a month, right? What's going to happen in the future? Are we going to have two tiers of information? One of the things from a human societal cultural point of view that has always been there is the idea of knowledge. But if you're going to start saying to people that that knowledge is going to be for those who can afford it, and those who can't afford it would get a second tier of knowledge, for example, they get a lower version of ChatGPT, very seriously dangerous. Other things reduces critical thinking. There's something called the gateway effect. So it will drive people to seek alternative black market, if you wish, or the dark web, unsafe sources. Technological stagnation. It discourages the exploration of new AI functionalities and global competitiveness. It creates a competitive disadvantage in the global tech landscape. These are just thoughts, but thoughts that we have to really consider when it comes to ethics and AI. And what is coming our way? Well, we've got, for those of you who are using OpenAI ChatGPT, Omni O3 is coming, which will be even more clever than O1, O for Omni, in terms of it will sound more human. In terms of you're going to write adverts or stuff like that, or essays, they will sound more like you actually wrote it. The other thing, of course, which has already started, is agentic AI, when the AI will start becoming more of an agent than just a fact finder. It will actually go out there and do the task that you would normally do yourself. So it becomes your agent. That is potentially a job, I won't say threatening, but a job changing thing. Harari said AI can process information by itself and thereby replace humans in decision making. That when it happens, that isn't a tool, it's an agent. And he's absolutely right, because that is what partly, not obviously all of it, but partly what agentic AI is all about. Out of interest and just for fun, I wondered if in the whole of the Torah ever actually mentions the word AI. The closest I could get to it was ha'ai, which is interesting because that means a heap of ruins, as in Joshua 7:2, 8, 9, led by Joshua, AI was destroyed by the Israelites. How interesting and fun is that? Which brings me to the final thing as I wrap up and about to hand back to my good friend Jonathan Strait. But before I do that, I wanted to talk to you about something which is not AI, but has absolutely everything to do with everything that I have spoken to you about today. AI, in a way, is a mirror of ourselves from an ethical point of view. This is today's headline in The Guardian, not my favorite newspaper, but still, it is in the Guardian newspaper today. And it says here, Thames Water diverted cash for cleanups to help pay for the board's own bonuses. If we are saying that AI is supporting us and it's reflecting us, and this kind of stuff is happening without AI itself, then I think maybe what we have got to fix is us, and then go on to AI. Which brings me finally. We're coming to Hanukkah, and a saying comes to my head. And the saying is, one candle can spark a chain reaction of progress. Etc. You, not me, you are that candle. You are that light to act ethically, to act morally, to act shrewdly, to act in a way that really understands humanity. And if we do that, please God, next year will be a great year for you, the best year you've ever had. And AI will be something to support us, not to be afraid of. If you're interested in the book, I'm sure that the organization would tell you more about how you can get hold of the book. And I now go over to my good friend, Jonathan Shane.
Jonathan, thank you. Absolutely fascinating. And I'm sure our audience have many questions that they can ask. So please type your questions in the next few minutes if there's something you would like me to pass on to Jonathan. A few questions spring to mind. You mentioned ChatGPT, you mentioned Gemini. What's the difference? How many of these are there, and what's the difference between them?
It's very interesting. One of the tests that I regularly do, Jonathan, is the idea of I give AI a prompt, yeah, whether it be ChatGPT, whether it be okay. The main ones that I use, okay, are going to be ChatGPT and various models within that. I'm not going to every single model, but I'm going to say broadly, yeah. So broadly, ChatGPT, I go into Claude, I go into Gemini, which is pretty good as well, and I go into Anthropic, and I also go into Copilot. So those are the big five that I go to. I may try out Grok occasionally, and Grok is getting much better, which is Elon Musk one. But still, the number one out there in terms of people using it is, we'll just call it Chat GPT, although there are models within it.
And you say that there's insufficient natural data sources
Mm.
for these models. What does that mean? Is it there's not
It's
enough
running out of
information for
data.
them to consume?
Yeah, it's literally running out of data. So what happens? There's something called synthetic data. Now, the guys behind the models, they say, well, they're using that to try things out, to test things out, and so on and so forth. But there is a danger looking at those figures that Harari and all the rest of them gave us, yeah, that well, what happens when we stop being creative for ourselves and rely so much on AI that it starts creating? For example, I got there in the back, and wait, over there, got there the book, okay. Well, I mean, so that's full of data, right? That's a 700-page book or whatever it might be, okay. But what happens when we start thinking, you know what? I'm going to listen to all these LinkedIn ads or TikTok ads or Instagram ads where they say that we can get AI to write the book now and you don't have to write it anymore. Well, so what happens when it starts writing everything? Yeah. Uh, what happens to original new thinking? Dangerous.
Mm. And also, what happens to who owns the material that's been produced?
Of course,
Uh,
and that's a thing all of its own, which is another question I get asked a lot about with Mid-Journey, about who owns the copyright. Yeah.
so, a couple of questions from people watching. Who minds the minders to ensure that AI is developed and used fairly and ethically and transparently? What legislative process is required or should be mandated?
So the EU is going through lots of stuff at the moment in terms of, I suppose they are the minders of the minders, if you wish, as you described them. So they are doing that at the moment. And there has to be a kind of, I suppose, at some point, a united front in terms of United Nations of minders. But I go back to those two really important slap in the face slides, which is, if I seriously, I do worry that if we get to the point and say we can't say that, you can't ask this, you can't ask that, because it could be, it could be a problem. Then we get the nanny state, And I worry about that.
Yeah, I suppose this perhaps touches on your comments about bias within these models, but surely the bias is simply a reflection of the data that the model has consumed.
Yes.
And presumably the model could be educated to iron out the bias or ignore the bias.
Yes, but you see, what your bias is my way of thinking. There's something in psychology that I talk about in the book, which is called the backfire effect. Yeah. And the backfire effect is this: if you say you've got someone who belongs to a cult, okay, and you say to them, I have got absolute scientific proof that your cult is a lot of mumbo jumbo. Yeah, it's absolute rubbish. Yeah, here's the scientific proof. The backfire effect, what happens is that the guy who belongs to the cult will take the information that you've given them and use it to reinforce in their minds that they're correct. And the more that you sound credible, the more they will say things like, "Oh, you've been sent to test me," and stuff, whatever it might be. So, what I'm getting at is that from his point of view, the guy at the count, he is right. He is not biased from the science point of view. The other guy is wrong because you see what I mean? He's biased and I'm right. So what do you do at that point? And that's where one of the most important things I think that we've got to take into consideration when it comes to AI is the ability to use critical thinking. Critical thinking is absolutely the top thing. We must teach our kids growing up in a world of AI how to do critical thinking. It was something that they would be taught a little bit at school and then a bit more at university. But I think this should be now a number one subject.
And it seems to be lacking even in the absence of AI in some quarters.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
but
we,
that's politics. Yeah.
we have another question here. How can we trust governments as diverse as, say, the US and China to exercise the necessary level of control to ensure that the principles you've set out are universally applied? Isn't there a danger that some countries just ignore them for geopolitical reasons with disastrous consequences?
Agreed. I'm agreeing. I'm sorry. I'm not going to give you a long, drawn out answer, Jonathan. It is, I'm going to say, I agree. Yeah. Money, power, all that stuff. But we've got to start thinking now because this isn't, you see, you've got country geographically, that's China, that's America, and whatever it might be, and it's huge, but it means it's kind of in a way contained. But this thing is absolutely all over the world, yeah. And so I think we, as the people, have got to stand up and say, no, we've got to look at this in a much more responsible way. Whether you can look at it from a Christian point of view, a Jewish point of view, an Islamic point of view, I don't care. But you've got to look at it from no, you've got to look at it from a human point of view.
You also were talking about images, and you said that you could easily tell that the image you showed of Donald Trump was a fake.
Mm.
But you mentioned that it's becoming a lot more difficult, and that images are it's more difficult to discern a fake image. Is this really the case? Is there no way um, to demonstrate that an image isn't real? Certainly, we've had that ability until relatively recently with photographs, with physical photographs, to decide whether they were genuine or not. Is it really the case that imagery is lost and we can't prove one way or the other?
Now, it's not the case from a technical point of view. Absolutely no. From a technical point of view, especially with, again, going back to EU directives and stuff like that, they are going to be requiring companies to have, if you wish, some type of a watermark that the AI itself can recognize that it's AI. Yeah. That's not the issue, though. You see, we're talking about people, okay? The trouble with everyone at the moment when it comes to AI is everyone is so bloody process driven that they're not thinking as people. Now, what do I mean by this, Jonathan? It's very important. Give me just a second to explain this. We're living in a world where people are making judgments very, very, very quickly. Yeah. If you show a video that's over 30 seconds, 1 minute, whatever it is long, I'm bored. Because my threshold has gone. Yeah. You've got to get to the point and tell me quickly now what's going on. If people are going to be inundated with more and more and more and more images, more video, more words, more whatever you want it to be, yeah, and they are making snap decisions about whether this is true or whether this is not, yeah, then that's where it could go through the net. Now you could say, but Jonathan, don't worry about it. AI is so fast; it would tell them, warning, this probably is AI, yeah. But again, you're not understanding the psychology of people, because a lot of people would say, oh, that's interesting. You're telling me that I shouldn't quite trust this. Why? Why should I trust you? Are you the BBC or something? Why can I trust you? Do you see what I mean? And
Yeah.
so that is something that they're not understanding the psychology of it. It's not just saying, here's a warning that this is AI. There's a lot of it's people are much deeper than that. Who's giving me the warning?
So people will choose to believe what they want to believe.
Well, they would go with their tribe.
Yeah, whether it's true or not. Jonathan, it's been a real pleasure to have you as our guest this evening. This book is an absolute masterpiece. It's available on Amazon and a few other places. And to say thank you for being our guest. One of my books of photography is winging its way to you. I hope you will enjoy leafing through that in the next few days once it's reached you. Now, a few words about our upcoming program before we go. We kick off the new year on Monday, the 6th of January, with a welcome return to Dr. Helen Fry. This time she's telling the story of Klaus Ascher, who became an ex-troop commander. Helen has been our guest many times before, and she never fails to give the most excellent talks. The following week, on Monday the 13th, I'll be chatting to Harvey Lisberg about his new book, Managing the Bad Boys of Snooker, Jimmy White and Alex Higgins. We have much more in the pipeline. Please check milim.org.uk to see what's coming. Sign up for our newsletter, and that way you will be sure not to miss anything. All of our online events are free, but you can make a donation if you wish. There's a link in the chat, and you can visit our website. So it remains for me to thank our guest, Jonathan Gabay. Once again, thank you so much, Jonathan, for being with us.
Thank you, and hugs the mayor.
And to you, this is our last event of 2024, in a year in which we delivered about 25 events, and I'm hoping we can step things up a little for the coming year. We actually used to do one pretty much every week, so we're going to try and get back a bit nearer to that. Wishing you all a happy Hanukkah, Chag Sameach, and a peaceful festive season, and looking forward to seeing you all next year. Until then, stay safe. See you soon.